Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld adventure in the Cold Bog with the Cult of Jingz. It's been a while since the last episode in which our small colony of Liviana came face to face with several groups of pirates. Somewhat surprisingly though, apart from the sad loss of Grizzly Bear Vladimir, we survived those fights without any noteworthy casualties. And so, with the arrival of spring in the Cold Bog, we are now one step closer to finally obtaining the mysterious Redhawk relic, a powerful plasma sword, which in the hands of the right wielder could be a dangerous tool to use against our enemies. And speaking of which, today those enemies don't leave us waiting long. To start us off today, we have a pack of 72 man-hunting lynx appear, and I would say the best course of action here is to simply close off all of our exterior doors. Maybe we get lucky and an enemy raiding party takes care of them for us, otherwise they should calm down and eventually move on in about 1 or 2 days. Of course, this makes the acquisition of some of the gear that the pirates dropped last episode a tiny bit more complicated, but most of it is tainted gear in mediocre quality anyway, so a few more points of deterioration probably won't make too much of a difference. And so instead we can focus on what we can do inside of our colony, and that is actually something that is quite literally monumental, as we still have to construct a huge monument as part of the mighty structure quest here. Thanks to our mining efforts, we have also finally cleared a building space for it right above our Garanland trees, so let's put down the blueprints and let the construction begin, although this will likely take more than just a few days. In the meantime, we have a snow hare self-tame and we'll have to see whether or not it can survive out here for long enough until we can open up the doors to let it inside. Either way, this is likely not going to decide the fate of our colony. Another largely inconsequential subplot that I would still like to see develop further is the love between Tuk and Squigs, or rather the current lack thereof. Nonetheless, we are casting yet another word of love psycast on Squigs. Tuk meanwhile is still under the effects of his. For our monument then, we are of course using as much wood as we can. Thanks to our woodmaker dryads we have an easy time acquiring more, and there is enough here as it is that we have no other choice but to build out of stone, so I think our granite supply will be the deciding factor in how quickly we can get this finished. By the way, another leftover from the last episode is yet another anima tree linking ritual, and of course we are continuing here with our tough brawler Wyatt, who will now receive his 3rd level psycast. Just in that moment, we also have the Royal Tribute Collector arrive. I have to say though, despite their equipment, I don't really fancy their chances. And yes indeed, a short time later the slaughter begins. On the bright side, we also received the 5th and final mission in the Search for Redhawk questline. It is another terminal that we need to hack inside of a worshipping village, and I think our Super Psycaster Light should have no trouble taking care of that. And speaking of psycasts, Wyatt is now ready to learn his 3rd one. The choices presented to us here are really not all that great, but I think we can go with Beckon this time. This psycast will force the target to approach Wyatt, which might be very useful not only because he is a talented melee fighter, but also because it forces enemies to move out of cover to approach him. Admittedly, against another group of 200 plus tribals, that is probably not the most useful thing in the world, but against smaller groups of more powerful enemies it might give us a handy advantage. One small group of powerful people, meanwhile, is being completely decimated here. Luckily, we are not receiving any relationship penalties for this, but I think it's safe to say that none of the Imperials here will leave the map alive. And despite most of their gear not being biocoded, they also unfortunately don't drop anything too useful, so we can stay focused on constructing our monument, which as you can see is slowly but steadily taking shape. Especially for Thoraya, this is great construction practice. She has advanced to the level of Strong Master with a skill of 15, while her husband Maniac is honing his mining skill of 11. After all, to complete the monument, we need more granite, and lots of it. On the next morning then, we begin the construction of the first granite elements, but with granite being the hardest of the 5 stone types in the game to work with, this could take some time. And so, for the most part, the day here remains uneventful. Anyone who is even remotely capable is either constructing, mining or cutting stone chunks, and on the following morning that actually also includes Master Craftsman Armando, who instead of just pumping out tribal ware is now putting his construction skill of 12 to good use. At the moment we just need any help that we can get. And as the sun is rising again, you can see it here, the number of lynx has drastically dwindled. As expected, most of them have already wandered off, and the rest is thankfully in the process of doing so. The birth of a new day then also brings with it the birth of a new grizzly bear, and so we can give out yet another name from the list of my generous patron supporters in the naming rights tier and above, and our newest fuzzy friend here will go by the name of Darmok. And that reminded me that we also still have a few dryads without a name, so our carrier dryad will now go by the name of Revanche, while our 2 barkskins will be named J-Crow and Shoya. Congratulations to all 4 of you for being picked, and welcome to Liviana. In the late morning hours, then the last of the links has vanished, so it's time to open up the gates again. That way we can now take care of some repairs to our outer walls and collect some valuable loot around the base exterior too. In the afternoon then, Kevin and Thoraya get into a social fight, although I would prefer to call this one a straight-up bullying by Thoraya. Kevin is actually incapable of violence and therefore not fighting back at all, so it is no surprise that he quickly goes down to one of our more capable melee fighters. Being our medical specialist, this is of course not exactly helpful, but at least Thoraya is kind enough to carry him into the hospital, where colony leader Specs then takes care of him. After another snowy but otherwise uneventful night, we then start off the next day with some more wealth management. Let's make use of the last few days in which the Cold Bog is not sprouting flammable grass everywhere. That way we can make sure that the fires here remain nice and contained. Shortly after that, another grizzly bear sees the light of day, and so we welcome Dawn into the Cult of Jingz, named after patron Dawn Pierce. The afternoon then also has a rather unfortunate event in store for us, as we are informed that a band of pirates have set up a sunblocker machine not too far away from Liviana, and until we take it out, the Cold Bog will remain plunged in complete darkness. And not only does this slow down the work speed inside of the colony, no, it also puts our Devil Strand production to a complete halt, as our tree temple / greenhouse is set up to work with natural sunlight, and without electricity we have no substitute for that. So I think we need to do something about this, and quickly. Before we do though, let's advance Wyatt to Psycasting rank 4, maybe we can get something useful this time. And, well, I have to say, Walrace, Smoke Pop and Focus, that is once again a rather unfortunate selection. The best choice in my opinion here would be Smoke Pop though. Maybe we will at some point have Wyatt encounter some turrets, and casting this will prevent them from locking onto him. Now we jump ahead to the next morning, although judging from the light levels you would hardly notice. At least a Psychic Soothe brightens the mood of all males a bit, but still, I think it's time to take action. And so, after constructing a few extra bedrolls and making a few extra meals, it is time to launch a caravan, and we are taking Super Psycaster Light alongside the more combat-focused Wyatt, Donut, Maniac and Chutney. We are also taking Muffalos, Tina and Cindy with us. You never know what you might find in enemy camps. Apart from that though, only standard provisions, nothing special. I'm hoping that our enemies have enough food lying around to support the return trip. While the caravan is still packing, we can then name yet another grizzly bear. From now on, this one will go by Herv Dur, after the patron of the same name. And yes, you can get a name like that into this or any other series of mine too. Head on over to the Pete Complete Patreon to find out more. Our caravan then finally leaves the map in the early evening. As you can see, we have also equipped most of them with heavy marine gear. We are, after all, going to fight some pirates, and those should be taken seriously. Back in the base, meanwhile, the sensory mechanites are also still running wild. Just like I said last time though, apart from the increased need for sleep, they don't bother us too much. Our sleepless Armando and his construction buddies, meanwhile, have started flooring the monument, and this is by far going to be the most resource-consuming part of the project. To floor all of this, we need about 1,500 units of stone, and that's definitely quite a bit more than what we currently have. What we do currently have, though, is a bunch of unused, albeit tainted recon helmets, and even though they come with a slight mood penalty for all of those colonists who are not completely insane, I have to say the increased levels of protection we get out of them are just too good to pass up. Even excellent quality plasteel or uranium helmets are not able to compete with that. The only exception are the few bits of masterwork and legendary gear we have, but of course those are far from enough to supply the entire colony. So yes, the Cult of Jingz is taking one more step towards becoming more modern, all of that however without losing its nature-focused roots. Eventually then, as an otherwise uneventful day comes to an end, our small caravan arrives at the pirate base, and as you can see we are dealing with a rather small outpost here. That slightly larger building on the left is most likely where the sunblocker is housed. I am also spotting a single turret here, but that is likely not going to cause any trouble. All in all, if we play this smart, this should be an easy fight. Before we begin the attack though, Specs and Coco can quickly hunt down a Mega Sloth, and then Maniac can start taking potshots at the enemy base, which quickly attracts the pirates' attention. We are then preparing a neat little ambush just around the corner of mountain here. That way our enemies will have to get nice and close, a perfect opportunity for us to greet them with a couple of berserk pulses. All of that should keep our enemies busy with each other for long enough, while our fighters stay in the back taking aim at whoever pops their head out. And there we go, that's the pirate group defeated without having taken a single scratch of damage. Looks like these 5 here would fit right into our XCOM series. As Maniac and Donut then crack open the first building, the sunblocker is revealed as expected, and shortly after, with Maniac destroying the battery over here, the turret then shuts down, and that means we can already reform our caravan, or at least part of it. Having taken no injuries, I think Light, Chutney and Muffalotina can take a small detour on their way home, as they will now visit the worshipping village which houses the terminal that we need to hack for the last clue about the Redhawk relic. After firing volley after volley at it, Donut then finally destroys the sunblocker, and with that our Devil Strand should finally continue to grow. Maniac meanwhile discovers only a few more valuables, but nothing extraordinary, and so, after disassembling the solar panel here to once again shut down the turret, this part of the expedition is finally ready to return home. And back home you can see that our monument is starting to come along nicely. I am actually tempted to turn this into our new and improved tree temple, perhaps to signify that the Cult of Jingz has reached a grander influence. Either way, with the sun finally making a return to the Cold Bog, we receive another quest, this one promising ruins of potentially rare weapons and armor. Definitely intriguing, but probably also quite dangerous, and as you can see, not too close to our village. So we'll have to see whether or not we'll actually get to launch an expedition over there. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. At the moment I am tempted, but also hesitant to send anyone away for that long. In our village, meanwhile, another day is slowly winding down. The darkness, a familiar companion to our cultists at this point, although it also poses some dangers, as the larger of our 2 caravans gets to experience just a few moments later. Ambushed in the middle of the night by 4 pirates, admittedly poorly equipped ones, Maniac, Donut and Wyatt are now seeking cover behind some rocks, while Muffalo Cindy is running right into the line of fire. Let's keep our fingers crossed here that she does not get hit. And there we go, a few minor injuries to frontliner Wyatt, but the battle is won. His marine gear likely prevented him from suffering any worse. The few cracks and bruises meanwhile are quickly patched up by Donut, and then our caravan can continue to be on their way. Back home meanwhile, Armando burns the rest of last episode's pirate raid. We have grabbed all that we want from the remains, the rest just unnecessarily increases our colony wealth. A short while later then, Light and Chutney arrive at the worshipping village, and everything in here looks just as I had expected, a single building surrounded by tribespeople and the ancient terminal right inside of it. In other words, this should be doable, so as Light makes his way over there, and as long as the village has not yet turned hostile, let us already send Chutney and Muffalotina back home. Light then proceeds just as he did last time, first casting invisibility on himself and then beginning to hack the terminal. This causes the entire village to turn hostile, but they have no target they can see, and so Light can calmly finish the hack without being disturbed. Afterwards, with about 5 seconds of invisibility still left, he can use his skip psycast to get safely out of there, and just as the invisibility wears off, Light reaches the edge of the map, most likely leaving the villagers very confused about what just happened. Either way, Light can now return back home, and that's the quest completed, and that means our next and final step in this one is to actually obtain the Redhawk sword itself. And I have to say, this coincides very nicely with the most likely upcoming end of the series. Right about now, the Cult of Jingz feels almost complete, if you will, and acquiring another powerful relic as well as constructing a huge monument would definitely underline that feeling. Speaking of said monument, once again you can see we are making some good progress here. Most of the wooden pieces are already constructed, now it's only a matter of acquiring enough granite to finish the rest. So good thing that our first caravan, including Head Miner Maniac, returns just a few moments later. He will definitely be busy these next few days, especially with Chutney, who usually helps him out, still on the road. And so, as Wyatt makes a full recovery from all of his injuries, and as another night sets across the Cold Bog, I think we have reached a good point to make the cut for today. Now, with the series coming to an end soon, I would also like to ask you guys a very important question at this point, although I would like to ask it over some fan art, this time submitted by Gracie, as well as the returning Doggo Doggy and Chrysaor. Now, the question I'd like to ask is actually rather straightforward. Once the Cult of Jingz has acquired the first piece of the Arconexus map, this series here will come to an end. However, the next one will pick up right where this one left off, as the game allows us to take up to 5 people from our current colony to found the next one. And well, my question, as straightforward as it may be, is still a tough one. Who do you think we should take? Now, I have to admit, I already have some ideas and preferences for what might make a good story for the second chapter, but none of that is set in stone yet, and I am very eager to hear what you guys think. Should we stick with the originals or let some of the new guys carve their own path for chapter 2? Should we focus even more on psycasts or more on combat people or something in between? All of that is very much still open to be discussed, and I am definitely looking forward to hearing your suggestions. For today though, let's wrap up the episode at this point. As always, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.